ओम श्री वेदांत महाचलम हि परितः संयोज्य सूत्राहिपं सद्वातागम पोषितात्म हृदयं तत्पूर्व पक्षासुरैः सिद्धान्तोक्ति सुरेश्वरैश्च मथितो यः कृष्ण दुग्धाम्बुधिः स्वीयानाम् अमृतं प्रयच्छति समां पायाद् गुणोद्यन्मणिः। सकल गुरुभ्यो नमः, देवताभ्यो नमः। I have extreme pleasure in having a panel of very good scholars who have studied Bhagavad Gita not only in its traditional manner but also in a manner which is relevant for our everyday life. We have Dr. Amarabadi Seshaya, project officer in the Sri Venkateshwara Vedic University. We have Dr. Ramarao, great scholar in Bhagavad Gita and who is a passionate promoter of Bhagavad Gita in our everyday life. We have Dr. P. Srinivas Krishna, who is a scholar in the Rashtriya Sanskrit Vidyapith in the Management Center, a profound scholar in Bhagavad Gita and Sanskrit, and Dr. I.S. Sravanti, who is a great psychologist, studied Bhagavad Gita, given lectures on Bhagavad Gita. We have such a cross section of scholars who would participate in our discussions. Main purpose of this discussion is to clarify the doubts and the questions which the listeners and the common people may have on Bhagavad Gita. Today we are on a job of mission to telecast, to propagate, to foster the messages of Bhagavad Gita and remove the misconceptions that are there in the fore in the society about Bhagavad Gita, and also foster the youngsters to study Bhagavad Gita so that they can benefit from the messages of Bhagavad Gita in everyday life. A pride for heritage. You take any country for that matter on the globe, the country, the mankind prospers only when they have pride for their heritage. So it is not that pride for heritage for its own sake, but pride for heritage to see its relevance for our everyday life. So today we are trying to show how the messages of Bhagavad Gita, the lessons which Bhagavan Krishna preached to Arjuna, who was caught in a dilemma of failing in his duties, have been relevant for our everyday life. Now, Vedas are the rich reservoir of our knowledge heritage. So, Vedas are also called Shrutis, they are also called as Amnayas. Veda, the word Veda comes from the root Vidajnane, that is the reservoir of knowledge. Then Shruti, it is called because it comes from the Guru to Shishya, Shishya to Shishya, through the medium of listening, through the medium of Sravana. That is why it came to be known as Shruti. So we can imagine how this rich, profound reservoir of knowledge running into several thousands and thousands of riks. In fact, earlier the impression, the meaning, the reflection was that Vedas are Ananta. But it is only later Vedavyasa classified them as Rigveda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda and Samaveda with all shakhas. But otherwise Ananta Vedas came to us through the medium of Sravana. They are also called as Amnaya because they are supposed to be scriptures who have not changed in their order. Amnayo Ananyatha Pathat Isha Buddhi Sthita Sada. So that is why Veda, Shruti, Amnaya refer to our basic source material for Indian knowledge heritage. You must ask question, why Vedas have such reservoir of knowledge relevant for everyday life? One of the Acharyas among the Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya has said that Adukkham itarat sarvam jiva evatu dukkhinaha tesham dukkha prahanaya srutiresha pravartate. See, all the beings except the human beings experience some sort of observable misery or unhappiness or sorrow, and Vedas provide to you the rich sources for removing these measures, means of sorrow. Sorrows could be from Adi Laukika, Adi Vaidika, Adi Bhautika, Adi Vaidika and Adhyatmika. So Vedas provide the means of removing all the sorrows of life. It has been a misconception in recent times that Vedas are only mantras for our rituals. That is the most unfortunate part of our present day knowledge system, present day intellectual society. Otherwise, Vedas till very recent centuries, almost several centuries ago, Vedas were studied in all the institutions. Vedas were considered as the reservoir of knowledge by all classes of people. And Vedas are not meant only for one community or the other. They have relevance, message for our everyday life. Subsequently, the Upanishads come, the Puranas come. Then Mahabharata Purana is one of the greatest epics of our Indian knowledge heritage, and Bhagavad Gita is part of this Mahabharata. There are many misconceptions about Bhagavad Gita. We will dispel them in the course of our discussions, and we will have to take Bhagavad Gita in the most generous and positive mindset so that we understand the message of Bhagavad Gita. So it starts with the first sloka is very pertinent for the entire message of Bhagavad Gita. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. You know, we have many times the habit of reading Bhagavad Gita, making it by heart, but we rarely try to understand the meanings and its deeper meanings for our everyday life. Here you just understand how profound is the meaning of this first sloka. Who is Dhritarashtra? Dhritarashtra is a blind person, born blind, and he asked the question to Sanjaya. Straight away I go into the relevance of this sloka to our everyday life. Dhritarashtra, the name itself, you know, incidentally many names in Puranas have very profound meaningful etymologies. Etymology means the way in which we derive meanings. Dhritam Rashtram Ena Saha. Rashtra means this body, the one who holds this body. So all of us. So Dhritarashtra symbolizes every one of us. He is an icon for every one of us. But he is depicted there as a born blind person, but without eyes, but we are all blind persons with eyes. See, in Purandaradasa in one of the songs says, Kurudunai santege hotante, adu eke hoito. So he describes the human being as a blind dog. See, it is irrational, it does things which are unconnected. So we should not feel shy to call ourselves as irrational blind persons. Because if you reflect upon how the way in which you behave, you find that you have not analyzed the situation properly. So Dhritarashtra asked the question to Sanjaya. Sanjaya is Samyak Jayati iti Sanjaya, the one who is always victorious. You think our body politic, which is always victorious, we don't really realize our conscience, Sakshi, the inner voice, as we often say. In fact, there also we become hypocritic in saying that my inner voice says. Normally inner voice is saying something else, but we say my inner voice says. But if you have real contact with the inner voice says always the correct thing. So Sanjaya signifies the Sakshi, inner voice. So the blind person should ask the inner voice. When Samaveta Yutsavaha Mamakaha Pandavaha Chaiva. So in the battlefield, again the battlefield is not Kurukshetra in Haryana near Delhi. You don't have to go to see the Kurukshetra war or the place where Bhagavad Gita was preached. Of course, if you go there, I have gone several times there, given lectures on Bhagavad Gita under the tree where Bhagavad Gita is supposed to have preached several thousand years ago. It is very, very electrifying, very inspiring. Yes, it is worth going to Kurukshetra and seeing. But if you want to see Kurukshetra around you, you look to your mind, because the mind is the battlefield of Mamakaha Pandavaha. Mamakaha stand for the thought processes of vanity, thought processes of selfishness, thought processes of adharma, and Pandavaha, the word Pandavaha also means Pandu is white. Pandavaha, those which are blemishless, which are free from the biases and prejudices of wrongdoings. So when these two thought processes start the warfare inside your mind, Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yutsavaha mamakaha pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. So whenever we are in a dilemma, in situations of conflict and great depression, you ask your Sakshi as to what is its voice. Of course, you will not be able to reach your Sakshi so easily. Even Arjuna could not, or anybody could not reach the Sakshi. You need the message of Bhagavad Gita through Krishna. He approached Lord Krishna. Whether Duryodhana, being in Dharmakshetra, got the good thought of giving a small piece of land to Pandavas and avoid the war, or Pandavas, who were always righteous, were induced by being in that place to avoid warfare and go to Vanavasa and give the entire land. So that kind of dilemma always comes in the minds of those who are prone to think in a wrong way, in a very prejudiced way. Dharmakshetre, Kurukshetre. Kurukshetra stands for Kauravas. Kauravas are the symbol of adharma. You may ask the question why Kauravas are adharma. That goes to a different set of discussion, but we all know what kind of wrongs they had done throughout their life to the perpetuation of adharma and wrong things in life. So Kauravas, Kurukshetra is also the kshetra where Kauravas, the Kuru, the Mula Purusha of Kauravas, had done lot of yajnas. That was called as Kurukshetra. Dharmakshetra also means, kshetra means what? Land, where dharma done a little bit could generate, just as in the land, if you sow a seed, it grows into a plant and it generates lots of crops. So in the same way, in Dharmakshetra, a small act of dharma would create lot of good produce. If you put one seed, you get hundreds of seeds out of it. The crop comes. So in the same way, like kshetra, Dharmakshetra is a place where you, by putting dharma, you will be able to get the reap of dharma. So there are several meanings like this to show that this is a situation of dilemma. Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kim akurvata Sanjaya. Then Sanjaya, in this first adhyaya, as I said, there are two models. Duryodhana is one model and Arjuna is another model. First, briefly, Sanjaya narrates what did Duryodhana do. Drishtva tu Pandavanikam Vyudham Duryodhanastada Acharyam upasangamya Raja Vachanam abravit. He first looked at the Sainyas of Pandavas and he came to Dronacharya and told a few things. Though Bhishmacharya was the Senapati, he did not go to Bhishmacharya. He went to Dronacharya. See the way in which he addresses him. Pasyaitam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatin Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Sishyena Dhimata. So he says, Acharya Panduputranam Mahatin Chamum Pasya. Though his Sainya was 18 Akshoini Sainyas, there were much less than these 18 Akshoini Sainyas, but still his mindset as an adharma perpetuator is so perplexed and complex. Like every one of us, when we do wrong things, our mind is confused, highly confounded. We will not be able to see the right things in the right time. So, Mahatim Chamum Pasya. And he had always, as a bad manager, he had always a very fearful perception. He did not have faith in his own people. To be a good manager, as I told, Bhagavad Gita is a treatise on management. We can derive the lessons of management in almost every adhyaya, in almost every sloka, in almost every character. So he addresses Dronacharya, Panduputranam Acharya. If you take the verse in this way, Panduputranam Acharya, you are after all Acharya for Panduputras. Why you always favor them? You always wanted Arjuna to be the superior Dhanurdhari. You always wanted Bhima to be much better Gada warrior than Duryodhana, Dushasana. So you are Panduputranam Acharya, Mahatim Chamum, Vyudham. Then Drupada Putrena Tava Sishyena Dhimata, Vyudham. It has been put in Vyudhakara by your Sishya, who is Dhiman. You have made him a very knowledgeable and very active person, very dhimanta person, and that is your Sishya. And Drupada Putra Dhritajumna was born to kill Dronacharya ultimately. The yajna was done by Drupada Raja to get children who can be, there is a big story in the Mahabharata. But so you have helped those people. So how can I have faith in you? So a bad manager who always doubts his own people can never be successful. This is one message which I derive from this sloka. And then he is always frightful. Pasyaitam Panduputranam Acharya. The sloka is designed by Vyasa in such a way that it gives messages. Acharya Panduputranam Mahatim Chamum Pasya. That is the correct meaning of that sloka. But the way in which it is designed, it gives the impression he addresses Dronacharya as a Panduputranam Acharya.
Guruji, I have a doubt. The Senapati of Kaurava's army was Bhishmacharya. But all of a sudden Duryodhana approached Dronacharya and started asking him questions. Pashyaitan Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum. And it seems that he tried to encourage some jealousy against the Pandavas in Dronacharya. Why he did like that, and what was there in his mind at that time?
No, it's a good question. It again reflects the way in which a person who is prone to do wrong things, always pursue the path of selfishness, would like to do. He was always afraid of Bhishmacharya and Vidura, those who were rightful thinkers, that he may tell even in the last minute that avoid the war, better give the land to the Pandavas, you can avoid this killing, which Duryodhana did not want at all. And you may ask the question why Dronacharya would not have said that to Duryodhana. But Dronacharya, being a guru for the Pandavas and the Kauravas, were more impartial than the Bhishmacharya, who was prone to foster Lord Krishna and the dharma in the system. So he did not want messages of sanity to himself at this early stage of the warfare.
What was the exact intention of the Pandavas before they were ready to fight the war? Did they simply want to take revenge for what the Kauravas did to them and Draupadi, or simply did they want to take back their ancestral share of the kingdom, or did they wish to fight only to establish dharma? I could not understand.
Well, you have to look at the actions of Pandavas in all the perspectives in a way, in my view. But the more robust purpose of Pandavas in fostering this war, or rather in participating in this war, was to establish the victory of dharma over adharma. And otherwise their action might be interpreted like many, the action of killing their own nephews and relatives and taking the land. It was not the feudal warfare as such, though it appeared like that, but it was essentially to establish the rule of punishing the adharmas and establishing the role of the dharma. Just as Lord Krishna says that whenever there is adharma, I take birth and dharma samsthapana avsthaya sambhavami yuge yuge, then he removes the adharma and establishes a dharma. So it was more a mission of Krishna in establishing the rule of law, the rule of morality, and which we may say even in the present world we need a Krishna to be reborn to generate a situation of dharma in our midst. So that was the reason. We have to take the more robust purpose of the action of the Pandavas.
Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishna Vande Jagadguru. So totally he is calling as a Jagadguru. So that is last Krishna is Sampurna Avatara Purusha. In Bhagavad Gita there is a first sloka you told Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. So it is the first sloka is first letter is Dha. The last sloka of Yatra Yogeshwaro Krishno Yatra Partho Dhanuddhara Tatra Sri Vijyor Bhuti Dhruvaniti Mama Ma. So this is the last letter is Ma, the first letter is Da. I think Da Ma is Dharma. So Dharma Rakshiti Rakshitha. Because of Dharma, Lord Krishna is doing like this. This is my.
It's a correct thing, yes. Ultimately, it is meant for establishing dharma and destroy the rule of adharma. When adharma, always in the avatar of the Paramatma, we see the preamble, one of excessive, atrocities done by the adharmis. See, even when Krishna was to be born, there is a grantha called Rukmini Vijaya by Vadaraja Swami Guru. It says all the devatas and Bhudevi went to Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma, saying that there is a burden on the earth and that needs to be removed. So even in this, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. So his janma is pradurbhava.
Yes.
He is not born like all human beings, and his karma is dharma, dharma samsthapana,
Yes.
and adharma nivritti. So we have to take the entire Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata as a story of how dharma becomes ultimately victorious.
Dharma
and
samsthapanarthaya.
dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Yeah. So that is the message. We have to take it in the robust way. Okay.
That is why Lord
Yeah.
Krishna's message is only for
Dharma samsthapanarthaya. Yeah.
Question is a more basic one actually.
Okay.
I believe this kind of a doubt comes to many other viewers as
Yeah,
well.
please. Yeah.
As you know, it's a longish dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna, right in the battlefield, when both armies have assembled and at the
have-
drop of hat they are able to...
Yeah, they have blown their conch shells also. You are right. Very
At
good.
that kind of a situation,
Hmm.
this kind of a longish dialogue, even if it has taken place at the maximum speed, it would have taken a couple of hours easily.
Easily, yeah.
Do you think this is realistic? Such a dialogue, such a longish dialogue could have taken place right in the war front? I mean, it looks a bit abnormal, don't you think so?
Well, abnormal from the point of view of our modern style or speed of communications. But could you have imagined a few years ago that if you link up two computers with a cable, you can transfer the data several megabytes in one computer to another megabytes, gigabytes even in split seconds. That happens when the communication is perfect. And the way in which you can communicate between two minds is supersonic speed, if the minds are properly aligned, if the wavelengths are the same. So my own interpretation of this whole episode is that the Krishna and Arjuna, their computers, the mind computers, were linked up with this supersonic speed of communication, and question answer session took place. Later on, of course, Vyasa has converted into the composition of slokas, then Sanjaya narrates it to Dhritarashtra. It appears as if it took 18 adhyayas, more than 700 slokas, and even if you do the Parayana, it takes 3 hours. How could they have done it? So it is a question of, even when I talk to someone in the normal way, it takes longer time. But if minds communicate, we all believe in telepathy. And when telepathy takes place, it takes place with a supersonic speed. And we don't have any, our psychologist professor would be able to tell us how the minds can talk with great speed. And so my feeling is that, even in the ancient times, the gurus could transfer the vidya to the sishyas by just holding the hand like this. So his entire waves of knowledge go to the vibration, goes to the heart of the head of the other sishya, and it gets transferred. And this we see. So the whole traditional way of doing Ashirvadam, that you hold the hand on the head of the Sishya, is meant to see that your tapasshakti vibration goes into his body and converts itself into energy. Well, we all are believers in it, and we are all experiencers in it. So when you experience, you realize it. There are many gurus in our own midst who transfer these vibrations by their vibration power and Shakti. So we have to believe that there is some such power which made them communicate with transmission power, which took place with such great speed. And I would believe that even today I had read an article which said that the Guru and Sishya in the Himalayas can communicate with long distances when they are able to link with each other's minds, when there is everything is very calm and quiet. So we will have to have a sort of a faith in these psychic, this one. You will be able to say something more about it.